Unit 9. Acknowledging the problem is the first step towards a breakthrough. I am betting you didn't heard this chapter heading and then say, acknowledge the problem. Oh my, that is a startling concept. I haven't heard before. To the contrary, like a lot of things in life, we usually know what to do, know what not to do, maybe even know who to talk or ask for help. But how many times, right after you have done something you knew better than to do, have you said to yourself, I know better than that? My first guess is that you have said these words to yourself at least several hundred times, or you lead a really boring life. Knowledge confers no ability, and it certainly does not predict behavior. What you are going to listen about in the following pages is the value in not simply acknowledging that you have a problem, but doing so publicly, and more important, doing so in the form of a request for assistance, coaching, or help. And that is very important. Remember, acknowledge, acknowledging publicly, and requesting for assistance, coaching, or help. The act of authentically acknowledging responsibility for an existing problem, as well as asking for help, shifts your relationship to the problem. First, you make the problem visible to yourself, then to someone else, along with a request for help. In doing so, you set up a condition of implied accountability. You have made yourself available to be held to account for resolving your own problem. Nice going. Said this, let's continue with our history characters. Bev ushers up to her office. Before she sits down with us, she asks her assistant to move a couple of meetings scheduled shortly to later in the week, commenting to us. That's statistical stuff I just moved. Sounds like what you have brought me may be a bit more strategic. Remember, learning and development is a primal part of a strategic factor employees. If your staff of your organization or business unit is well trained, they will go for reaching the KPI established, and therefore the strategic factors for employees and other key stakeholders like customers, corporate, or suppliers. Caroline looks at me, then back to Beb. I don't know if it's that important, Beb. I am having some challenges with my team's performance, which I am hoping you can give me some tips on. Ron speaks very highly of you and your reputation. Even before today, he has always had me interested in meeting you. So, if I am so interesting, Beb responds, why haven't we met before today? Caroline, let me guess. You have never been at the point where you felt the need to reach out for help. Or maybe were willing to admit it. That's one of the things that makes me crazy about working here. Everybody waits until they have a crisis before they reach out or seek out other managers that might be valuable connections for them. And this, my friends, is one key point in learning and development and strategic planning. Don't wait for a crisis. Start acknowledging, acknowledging publicly and asking for help before the crisis. By the first time she finishes her sentence, Bev is on her feet and heading towards a whiteboard in her office. Look, she is almost shouting. She starts drawing something that resembles a wedding cake. She turns and shakes the dry eraser marker right at us. We measure so much individual performance around here. No one, especially a manager, wants to own up to the reality that these plays in our business have become so complex that it's really hard to know who should get credit for which results. We are so concerned about annual revenues, about annual reviews, about annual evaluations, which, by the way, everybody cheats on, that we completely underestimate the talents of our most valuable people, our mid level managers. Remember, our most valuable people, our mid level managers, people who work out operation, the day to day, who take businesses and departments and business units to their goals. I don't mean that individually, they are the most valuable. A lot of them are pretty average folks, but taken as a whole, they represent the most powerful and underutilized asset we have at MoneyPump. Remember, MoneyPump is our hypothetical name of this company. Baby's sort of ranting, not with an edge, but with a passion that seems to have been pent up for a while. So what's with the drawing? I ask, mainly to slow her down. Oh, she laughs and grins. I got so wound up there that I almost forgot where I was going to start. Caroline, please understand that my little speech has nothing to do with you, personally. It is more the culture of managers here that has me wound up, staring right into the face of a desperate need to work smarter. We all stand around and go, yep, yep, gotta work smarter. Then we go right back to working harder. Ah, it makes me crazy. We let systems, policies, and practices or internal operations that were designed for another time dictate how we are going to work rather than learning from the work itself. Beb, I chime in again as she seems about to take off into another rant. So, what about the model you started to draw? Alright, says Beb. You know what, Caroline? I've known Ron for any number of years, and I always tell him to loosen up and have a little more fun, show more passion. But I am glad he is so practical, especially when I get like this. She returns to the board to finish her drawing, but of course keeps right on talking. You see, there is no question that as managers, we get paid to see to it that results get produced, obviously in a lot of different areas. If you ask any manager, that's the answer you'll get. If you ask them how that happens, the conversation starts to get interesting. If you hang in there, eventually you'll get the behaviors produce results. and the ability to generate the behaviors comes from the resources available. Every manager thinks that if you give them enough of the right people and a sufficient budget, they can get the results they are asked for. Caroline chimes in at this point. Well, so far, Beb, I agree with everything you've said. I am at a point where I am beginning to think I don't have all the right people, at least as my managers. That's just perfect, shouts Beb. You know your track record. You get the job done, and you get results. So, if the results aren't there, it must be either the people or the other resources available that are the problem, right? That's why we are here, Beb. I brought this issue to Ron this morning, and he suggested, sort of insisted, that we come over here to see you. I assumed we were going to talk about what to do with my managers, since I see no issue with the other resources. Caroline seems into this conversation now. Oh, we'll talk about what to do with your managers. Alright, but it may not look like what you expected. Bev has a sly grin that I have seen before. Caroline is slowly walking into Bev's lair. Now I am really interested. What will happen when two of MoneyPump superheroes cross lightsabers? So, there you are, a manager with a proven track record, given a big opportunity to turn around a department with dismal performance for a couple of years. And all that stands in your way are your own people. Is that pretty much it then? Bev is standing now with her hands on her hips, and this sounds to me almost like an accusation. Well, that sounds sort of whiny, I say. Caroline is up now too, and she is leaning with her hands on the chair back. I certainly didn't mean it to sound that way, but I can see your point. I have gotten myself a bit wrapped around my own axle, and maybe I am not distinguishing my frustration very well. But let me ask you this, what else am I supposed to think? Ah, the first sign of vulnerability. Maybe this isn't going to be a bloody battle after all. Bev wisely lets the silence linger. After what seems like 5 minutes, Caroline continues. Bev, I notice you haven't completed your drawing quite yet, as I am standing here cooking in my own juice. I am beginning to suspect you are going to tell me there is something more to the picture than my stellar track record and my underperforming managers, and I haven't seen it yet. And I'm getting warmer. Beb quickly turns and now fills in the rest of the drawing, then steps away from the board. I can see why you have such a terrific reputation, Caroline. Many managers in your position would have bristled pretty hard at the remark I made, and some would have walked out of the office. But you heard what I said, and use it to reflect on your own point of view, and consider that you might be limiting yourself. That's pretty unusual in my experience. And pictured here is the theory of outcomes in organizations. Inherited connection, possibility, opportunity, action, outcomes. Thanks for the encouragement, Bev, but as you can see, I am in too much confusion about what to do to be getting my back up about much of anything right now. I am really feeling the need for answers, and I hope you have them. Caroline's shoulders drop and she returns to her seat. Before I explain the rest of the drawing, I want to underscore what just occurred here between the two of us. Maybe the three of us, if you'll indulge me. You came in here maybe 30 minutes ago, and I expected that you were looking to pose your question and receive an answer. Bada bing, bada boom. Gotta go now, thank you. Caroline nods slowly at Beb's statement. That is a typical posture, and appropriate in many of the exchanges we have with each other each day, in and day out. This was going to be a simple transaction. Like a good manager, you were going to admit you have a problem. I now acknowledge that what you were doing wasn't working. Ask for help, and then take your answer back and see if you could apply it. With this, Bev stops for a moment. Again, Caroline nods, only now she seems a bit impatient. You were going to be the same person when you left as you were when you came in. Am I right? Caroline eyes widen. I hadn't really thought much about myself coming in, to tell you the truth. Is that what I missed? Bev comes back to her desk and sits down. It is some of what you missed, but not all. What I have learned in dealing with problems myself is that they always have something to do with me. And I don't mean just what I'm doing. They have something to do with what I am seeing or not seeing about the problem. This was the magic that I was hoping Bev would begin to share with Caroline, and the primary reason I had brought her to this meeting. I know that, left to her own devices, Caroline, smart and determined as she is, would have found a solution to her frustration. Unfortunately, there may have been some unintended consequences resulting from whatever solution she would have developed, and it would have likely come from continuing to work harder. From my own experience, I knew Bev wouldn't let her take that route unless she was just too stubborn to listen. Bev is back on her feet and heading towards the board. Caroline, would you say you fall into the category of managers who think that if they just have sufficient budget and the right people reporting to them, that they'll find a way to produce the desired results? Caroline is quick to respond here. Well, I like to think there is some room in there for my contribution. But essentially, yes, I do fall in that category. I don't make excuses. I expect a lot of my people. Once the budget is set, we do everything we can to stick to it. And I have always seen to it that the results were produced. Until now, that is. Bev had grabbed a red marker and is drawing a large check around the two lower levels of her little wedding cake. Until now, you haven't needed to know about these two layers of the cake I have drawn, and I think now is the time to learn. When I suggested earlier that you might need to change, I was referring to something being wrong with the way you were seeing. What I was referring to was simply this. If you arrive at a place where you are presented with a problem and it looks familiar, it stands to reason that you'll attempt to solve it with methods you have previously used successfully. Caroline moves to the front edge of her chair. As a matter of fact, that's a pretty fair statement of what I have been doing. Is that wrong? See, how quickly you circle back to assuming there must be something wrong. Bev is now grinding. I know how much she enjoys watching people like Caroline, and me for that matter, walk themselves right into her invisible learning moments. What if there is nothing wrong, Caroline? She continues. What if rather than there being something wrong, there is something that you haven't seen? Something that was always there, but for some reason, maybe good fortune, maybe managers who had done good work before you, whatever, was invisible to you. What either was not required or was so strongly in place that you didn't need to do anything to put it there. Beb, I don't mean to sound rude, but it almost sounds like you are implying that I was just lucky in the past. If that is what you are suggesting, I am going to have trouble accepting that. Caroline's face is flushed. Beb bends over, hands on her knees, and laughs a hearty laugh, which I can see catches Caroline off guard. As her laughter dies down, Beb speaks again. No, girl, I would not say you got lucky. Well, maybe in which case we have all gotten lucky a time or two. No, you just never knew what else there might be that you needed to know. I am not I am not surprised because it doesn't get taught to us in school, and many managers are not able to teach what I'm going to do simply because they don't know it themselves, which is too bad because it makes us a less effective company. What you have never dealt with before is an insufficient supply of possibility, and I think that it is what your main problem is. I am not saying you have all the right people, but before you go there, I like you to give what I'm talking about a try. It is going to cost you something, but not from your budget or your pocket. Possibility? If you mean imagination, I have had all I need starting me in the face. Since I took over this group, these folks have more imagination that I can contend with, and they seem to be experts in using it to create excuses that are bulletproof, at least in their minds. Caroline's words come with an edge now. Her passion is engaged. That's not what I mean, and I can see why you draw that conclusion as well. No, the possibility I am talking about is more like the room for something to happen. And you personally think of any time that it looked like something should be able to happen and wasn't happening? Let me think for a minute. While I am thinking, maybe I can calm down a bit too. Caroline had stooped up unconsciously and walks to the window of Pep's office to gaze out on the lawn. Okay, let's see if this situation fits your question. A few years ago, my mother and my younger sister had a disagreement about what my sister was going to choose as a major in college. My mother had her heart set on my sister majoring in art. Gracias. And my sister chose a business major instead. Moby is an artist herself and knows my sister has tremendous talent. She had her sights set for my sister to have a career in the art world. They argued about this so seriously that my mother told my sister she was going to waste her talent, and she refused to pay my sister's college expenses. I don't know Caroline well, and as in many cases with people we work with, there is a lot more to know than we see every day in the workplace. This sounds very personal and still a bit touchy as she begins to tell the story. That was 7 years ago. My sister went on to pay for her own college expenses, with loans and some grants. My mother stuck to her word and didn't help my sister at all. The consequence that no one in the family expected was that they stopped talking to each other and have not been in the same room since. I have a feeling that for Caroline, this conversation is about to get very real. For a lot of people, this is the kind of thing that they only tell their closest friends. If she is willing to share this type of information with Beb, someone she had met only an hour before, with me present, she must really be playing for keeps with the issues she is faced with. And she must really trust me. This conversation is rapidly taking us into the territory of the soft stuff that is so hard for many of us to deal with in the workplace. But here she is, laying it out for us, leaving room for us to conclude that since she comes from such a dysfunctional family, it is no wonder some sort of problem finally surfaced in her management and managing style. Remember the five mindsets of the manager. That is not, of course, what either Beb or I are concluding, but it would have stopped a lot of people I know and work with. At this point, I jump in the conversation. Caroline, what did your dad think about all this? I am sure he couldn't have been happy to have your sister and mother not talking to each other. I am not sure whether this was part of the issue or not, but my father died suddenly in his early 40s, so he was not around for all this. He left us with some money, but not enough for everything, and mom needed to go to work. She found herself a position in one of the older companies in our town, and for the next 15 years, she set aside her own artistic interests. I know mom felt the responsibility for playing the part of both parts, knowingly that my father had set up college trusts for each of the three kids. I have a brother too. Maybe my mother wanted my sister to have an opportunity she felt she had missed. Caroline is speaking with her back to us, continuing to gaze outside with focus. Clearly, this is a big deal that she is sharing with us, in the warmest voice I have ever heard coming from her. Beb says to Caroline, I am sorry for your loss. Said this, we have ended Unit 9. Please, try to summarize what happened in this scenario. What mindset do you think Caroline is having? Which mindset, managerial mindset, do you think Bev is having with this? Remember, analytical, action, reflective, and so on. Please try to make your own notes and let's move to Unit 10. Hello, manager. This is Victor Marromo, a strategic planning and performance management coach and consultant. We've reached Unit 10. Is that the light at the end of the tunnel? We will continue with our history about the company MoneyPump and one of its brightest managers, Caroline, and one of their brightest learning and development managers, Beb, which implemented a pilot based on the ideas of the DDC, Development Community Forums, or Learning and Peer Forums. It is important to say that there is a clear misconception that managers had believed, I say, the last 10 or 15 years. They entirely think about strategy in a very comfortable way. That is, internal operations and activities and plans create strategy, which is a total mistake. Even governments these days tend to think about strategy in this way. Strategy is a breakthrough thought in which you have to put yourself in the shoes of your customers, your employees, your suppliers, and corporate in order to create and execute real strategy. Part of this is developing a real and effective learning and development communities throughout the organization, which can enhance the development and action of the strategy. Is that a light at the end of the tunnel? While acknowledging that you have a problem is a necessary first step towards a solution, it is not a solution in itself. It does, however, begin to make possible the solution, which was not the case before the mission. Caroling is about to find out that learning and developing something you didn't even know was there to be learned is far from a fatal event. Typically, many work environments unintentionally make the learning that is going to take place for Caroline next a lot less likely. Practices like evaluating and rewarding performance on an individual basis do not necessarily reveal or emphasize the importance of the collaborative nature of what really makes a difference to any customer or client. Beb, let her words of comfort linger for a few moments. Caroline says nothing, just returns to her chair. Caroline, this is exactly the kind of example I was looking when I asked the question. Hold on a moment while I arrange for something that I think may move our conversation along. Beb picks up her phone and punches in a few numbers. Martyr, says Beb, could you put your hands on that tea sampler box we have in the break room? Fill a carafe with hot water and bring 3 cups to my office? Thanks. Oh, wait. Is a manager's meeting this morning like it says on the calendar? Okay, good. Before you bring that other stuff down here, can you stop by that session and let Sonia know I am going to be stopping by in the second half of the session with a couple of guests? Great. See you in a few minutes. With that said, Bev hangs up and turns her attention back to Caroline and me. I was feeling like a cup of tea myself. It's all herbal, lots of flavors, fruity, minty, no caffeine. I am assuming this is top priority for you, so I thought we might just as well settle in for the morning. A warm cup of tea always seemed right to me. Mid morning, run, and I don't want to assume this has the same priority for you. I have been imagining being in Caroline's chair for many minutes now, recalling some of the sessions with Beb. If this is an invitation, I am not going to miss it. My budget is not due until the following week, and this conversation holds a promise of learning something. You can get rid of me that easily, Beb. I am not about to leave my friend in your clutches without some sort of chaperone. We both laugh because by now Beb knows from our previous meetings that I would not want to miss what is coming next. Alright then, Beb is back at the board again. The tea is on the way, and a little bit later, I'll show you both a live version of the pilot I'm running with managers in our department that I think you'll find very enlightening. In the meantime, let me finally get around to completing this little drawing I was going to do by tagging on to the story you told about your sister and your mother if I am allowed. You see, Caroline, in my view, the fact that your sister and mother are not talking is mostly a matter of there being insufficient possibility for them to resolve the issue. From everything I can tell, we actually see similar situations here at work all the time. Managers who disagree and stop collaborating. Employees who have disagreements and start avoiding each other. Managers who have something to say but don't say it. Most of the time, I think these situations get chalked up to people being difficult, personality conflicts, or whatever. Nobody seems to consider that possibility. Something is not right in the working relationship, which I am going to call connection, because the word seems more active. Some mutual understandings didn't get established. Some assumptions have been made. I'll take the example of your mother and sister for a moment to clarify what I am talking about. Meanwhile, Bev has printed a word possibility in one of the remaining open spaces in her drawing. Possibility, the room for something to happen, is a function of the connections among people. Now Bev prints the phrase inherit connection in the remaining space. Here's what I mean by inherit connection, she says. It's a natural space available to get work done between people or departments when nothing has been done to design the connection for what needs to get done. So, you work with what you got and make the best of it. I came up with this term based on my early work experiences. When I came to this company MoneyPump, naively expecting us to operate like we were all on the same team. Oh boy, was I disappointed. It took me a while to realize that. Just because the same person signed all our paychecks did not mean we were on the same team. Let me ask you a question, Bev says to Caroline. Have you ever had a co-worker or manager act towards you in a way that seemed inappropriate? This was a question that eventually led to an eye-opening realization on my part. When Bev had this conversation with me, Caroline sits up a bit straighter in her chair. Yes, not very often, but on a couple of occasions. I'll just assume you want an example. So I'll mention that a couple of times I have been told jokes by other managers that I thought were in poor taste. That is great. Bev is now using the marker as a pointer again. The cap is off, so I worry that as she waves it around, she might graze her own clothes and make a mess in her excitement. I don't mean great. They told you jokes you thought were inappropriate. I mean great example, because it will help me make the point I have in my mind. I bet if I asked you if everyone would think the jokes were not appropriate, you have to stop and think for a moment. Caroline raises her eyebrows. You're right about that. Where are you going with this? Beb puts the cap on the marker, so I relax. Well, not everyone thought the jokes were in poor taste. Otherwise, whoever told you the joke wouldn't have done that. Does that make sense? Caroline wins. Yikes. I guess it seemed to me at the time that the person telling me the joke was just being thoughtless. The jokes that were told to me were inappropriate. Well, that would mean that inappropriate has an absolute meaning, wouldn't it? Pep tosses this question out, almost like a throwaway, and then goes silent. What do you mean by that, Pep? Caroline is wide-eyed now. What I mean is that we all assume things, like because we think something is inappropriate, anyone would think it was inappropriate. Sort of stops. You couldn't do it. Pep's sly grin has returned now. I am going to say something now that will likely surprise you. The jokes, while I might agree with you and dislike them myself, were not inappropriate. The person telling you the jokes didn't have the type of connection with you that would allow for those kind of jokes to be shared with you. Caroline pushes herself away from the window sill. Bev, that sounds like crazy talk. Those jokes were inappropriate, period. No matter what connection we had. Caroline has now vaulted herself fully into Bev's trap, and if she listens carefully, she might hear the door slamming shut behind her. Bev turns and puts the marker in the tray below the board. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had someone you didn't know very well say something critical to you and you became upset? Of course you have. We all have. Now, have you ever had someone you knew very well and also trust say something very similar and you took it in stride? Again, of course you have, as have we all. Now, I know I'm moving a little fast here, and the two questions, this one and the other about the jokes, may not seem related, but they are. Think about it for a moment. How it is possible, and I am using the word carefully now, that the very same or similar remarks made by two different people could affect you so differently. If Caroline is anything like me, this question might call for a bathroom break. Okay, I understand the question, Beb. But we've been in here just long enough for me to need a break. So can I answer after a short time out? I'm with you, Caroline. I offer now. Can we take maybe 10 minutes, Beb? Sure, says Beb. That will give me time to check on the session. I want us to join and make sure everyone's fine about that. I can almost read Caroline's mind at this point. Her antennae are up and all systems are on red alert. There is new information coming and she isn't sure she is going to like it when it arrives. Unit 11. Does anyone have a wet towel? Hello, manager. Here, Victor Mark Romo. As a coach, whether you are interacting with a report or a peer, if you are going to tangle with someone's belief system, you want to make sure they will have a soft landing place. Beb's setup in this instance is about as gentle as anything I have ever seen. I am very happy. I put aside my budget this morning when Caroline first arrived. She isn't the only one having an awakening here. On previous occasions, I had been in Caroline's seat. Now I am the observer, and I can learn for myself how to facilitate this conversation if and when the occasion arises. I was already thinking about who my first victim, subject might be. This sounds terrible, doesn't it? Look, as an operational level manager, you are in charge of some of the most precious assets of your company. When I say subject, I mean asset. So let's use that. You are an asset manager, and your role is first and foremost asset development. Caroline is back now. So the curtain is about to go up on the next act of this play. As she walks back into the office, Caroline is already talking. Alright, babe, I have my answer to your question, and I don't like it. If I get what you are driving at, the difference between the comment that I was upset by and the comment I was okay with is the person who made the remark, not necessarily the remark itself. I don't really like the implication of that, because it sounds like I am more close-minded than I realized. I still don't get the connection with the jokes though. They were in terrible taste. Bev is reaching for the marker. Here we go again. That's pretty good. Caroline, you are definitely getting close to my point. How about this? Rather than thinking the difference between the two remarks was the person making them. How about if you consider that it was a connection or non-connection you had with whoever was speaking that made the difference? I mean, the information in both remarks was basically the same, right? Caroline puts her face in her hands for a moment and then sits back. This seems to be getting worse. Am I just dense? Person, relationship aren't the same thing? I don't get the difference and I am trying. Okay, says Beb. Just hold on. You are not dense. You should have been here when I had this conversation with Ron. I didn't think we were ever going to get out of the swamp. Hey, wait a minute, I said. You were just new at all this when you had this conversation with me. It was like getting a tooth drilled without anesthetic. I am fine with using me as a foil, if it means Caroline may be a bit less self-critical.